I remember it like it was yesterday. My father's name was Amram, and my mother was Jochebed. We were from the Hebrew tribe of Levi, the tribe from which the priests of the tabernacle came. I didn't know it when I was a young girl, but two of the greatest priests in our history would be my brothers, Aaron and Moses. My youngest brother Moses, he almost didn't live long enough to leave his cradle. The days were so dark and so evil. The Pharaoh of Egypt worried that the Hebrew people were becoming too numerous and too strong. To try and break us apart, he decided he would kill every baby boy as soon as they were born. But God always watched over us. He gave us two Egyptian nurses who told the king that our mothers had their babies too quickly, and by the time they arrived to help, the babies were already born. Pharaoh was angry and ordered that all little Hebrew boys be thrown into the Nile River. My parents were terrified, and so was I. We loved Moses. But my mother had a plan. She took a woven basket and covered it in tar so that it would act like a little boat. Then each day, when my parents went to work, I would take the basket to the Nile and place the little baby in the reeds, keeping a watchful eye for Egyptian soldiers and crocodiles. I would pretend I was washing clothes or I was gathering reeds for weaving. But secretly, I was watching my baby brother, praying that he wouldn't cry at a time when I couldn't reach him. One day, God ended our family's fear. I had placed Moses in the river where I could easily reach him if he began to fuss. I was weaving reeds when a line of camels arrived along the riverbank. I was stunned when a princess, the daughter of Pharaoh, stepped down with her attendants close by. There were soldiers too, and I was very fearful. I prayed that Moses wouldn't cry. Why was she there? Did she know about the baby in the reeds? Perhaps the princess had come to the river to worship the god Hapi, who caused the river to flood each spring and water the land. I thought she was the most beautiful woman I had ever seen, but she looked very distraught as she entered the water with her offering, a basket of fruit and nuts. She let it float down the river, and the attendants with her sang a song of worship to Hapi. I watched as the basket of fruit slowly floated past the place where I had hidden Moses. The eyes of the princess were following the basket as well. I held my breath. Would she see the basket covered in tar? She didn't and turned to leave the river, but as she did, Moses began to fuss. She paused and turned toward his quiet whimpers. She put up her hand to stop the guards and attendants. When she saw the basket, she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "There's a baby hidden in here!" The attendants murmured amongst themselves, and the guards looked alarmed. The captain of her guards stepped forward and said, "But your highness, this is a Hebrew baby." I'll never forget the look she gave that soldier. She didn't have to say a word. This was her baby, and she wouldn't tolerate anyone suggesting otherwise. Then one of her attendants came forward and said, "My lady, this baby is still feeding from his mother. We must find a way to keep him nourished." At that very moment, I felt the hand of Yahweh, the God of Israel, on me. I knew what I had to do. I jumped up and boldly walked right past the guards and the attendants to the princess. Bowing low before her, I told her that my mother could nurse the child for her until he was old enough to eat regular food. The princess was overjoyed, and I brought her to my mother. Can you imagine my mother's surprise when her daughter walked into the house with the princess of Egypt? But that is the story of how our God saved my baby brother and also gave the princess a son of her own. Hapi, the god of flooding, did nothing. Our God is the one who saves, and he used me, a young girl, to speak to a princess. Moses became the leader of our people, and many years later, he led us out of Egypt and away from slavery. It was God's plan all along to save him so that Moses could do this great task for God. What if Moses had been found and killed? Would we still be in slavery? Never, for God wouldn't have allowed it. God's plans, they never fail.